Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. And today we're going to be talking about multi-disc games. Plenty of PlayStation games happen to be on multiple discs, and setting them up can be a little bit confusing. So we're going to be covering that. And the biggest thing to cover on that is the m3u file. So we're going to cover creating the m3u file and organizing your games in general. And finally, we're going to cover something that I don't see mentioned that often, which is how to actually swap discs. Because what's the point in setting up your multi-disc games if you don't know how to swap? So we're going to cover that too. And let's begin. Multiple discs. What's the big deal, huh? Well, let's show you. First things first, I'm going to go to my PlayStation folder on my SD card, PlayStation, and I'm going to copy a multi-disc game over. Fear Effect. 4 discs, and it doesn't take forever to get from one disc to another, so it's going to be a good example. But first things first, I'm copying Fear Effect over to the drive, and now let's cut over to the Ambernick. Once it loads up, we're going to go to Consoles, PlayStation, and you can see here's the problem. Fear Effect is listed 4 times. At the very least, this causes clutter in the menu, but when you're swapping discs, it can also be a lot easier when you put them all together. So let's get into that. Okay, going back to the computer, we want to go back to the PlayStation folder on your SD card. And first things first, you can see that Garlic disregards everything after the parentheses. So parentheses USA, parentheses disk 1, none of that was showing up in the console menu, just Fear Effect, Fear Effect, Fear Effect. So everything beyond the parentheses is going to be ignored. First thing you're going to want to do is create a folder. And to keep it organized, I'm just going to copy the first part of the disk name, Fear Effect parentheses USA. I'm just going to paste that in as the name of the folder. And we're going to cut and paste or move all of these files into that folder. There we go. Now, that's the first part. Now we get into m3u territory. We're going to go back to our PS folder and copy this file name, folder name, just for organization's sake. We're going to create a text document. Now, if you don't see the txt extension, you want to go into View, Show File Name Extensions. There we go, .txt. And then we are going to rename it Fear Effect USA .m3u. Now, it's going to ask you if you want to change the extension. Go ahead, click OK. The thing to remember here is keeping everything organized. So the name of the disk file, the name of the folder, and the name of the m3u all make sense. So it helps to just have the same name on all 3. And don't underestimate copy and paste, because if you're typing it by hand, you get 1 character off and the whole thing stops working. Next, we're going to edit this m3u file, and you can use any text editor. You see I have Notepad++ there, but for the sake of what most people are probably going to be looking at, I'm going to open this in Notepad. And the key to the m3u file, as you'll see, is basically the path to the disks. But to show you, we're going to open that folder, and let's go side by side so this can see everything on the same screen. And there we go. Now, important thing to remember here, you've got folder name, then file name. Okay, folder name, then file name. Now, one trick in Windows, if I hold Shift while I right click, I get the option to copy as path, then paste. This here is the full path to the disk. We don't need the full path, but this gives you an idea of what we're doing. So we don't need the PS or the ROMs or the drive letter. So you can see delete that fear effect parentheses USA slash fear effect parentheses USA parentheses disk1.chd. But we're going to change those slashes as well. You can see here that we need to change it from the backslash, which is Windows slash, to the forward slash, which you'll see on the internet and every other file system. So forward slash fear effect parentheses USA slash fear effect parentheses USA parentheses disk1.chd. Big thing to remember, we've got slash folder name slash file name. And we're going to go ahead, copy this 4 times, 4 disks. So copy, paste. Then we're going to go ahead, rename it so that disk 2, disk 3, disk 4. These match the file names of the disks. And now the dots, some people say to put the dot in front of the slash. I've tried it both ways, works both ways, whatever you want, dot, no dot. You're fine. And I'm going to take a moment to say, if you have a bin in a queue file, my first recommendation would be try to just download a new version, download the chd version. You can probably go to archive.org and find the chd version. If for some reason you can't, there are ways to convert a bin in a queue to a chd, but if you insist on using a bin in a queue, then put the queue file in the path in the m3u. So just the queue files need to be referenced by the m3u. Okay, once that's done, we're going to go back to the Ambernick, check out PlayStation, and there we are, 1 entry, Fear Effect. And you can see if we click on it, which is actually clicking on the m3u, voila, game launches. No problems there. Now, let's talk about swapping disks. Here we are, Fear Effect, got to the point where it asks to switch disks. I'm going to go ahead, hit menu X, that's going to bring up the quick menu. We're going to go down to disk control. We're going to pick eject disk. That brings up this second little menu. We're going to use the left and right arrows to change the disk index to 2, disk 2. Then we're going to pick insert disk. Once we click insert disk, you'll see the little message, disk drive is open, then loads up, no problem. There we go. And that's about it. But one thing you might ask, now that we're on index 2, is that going to cause any trouble? Well, I'm going to go ahead, re-enter the game and kind of restart it so that the game starts fresh. You can see here, if I load the game, my save game is for disk 1. But I load it, it's going to tell me, hey, wrong disk, idiot. You got to switch to disk 1. So once again, menu X to go into the quick menu. We want to go down to disk control. We want to pick eject disk. Apparently the other one, load new disk, is legacy, so forget that. But eject disk, left and right to change the current disk index back to 1. Insert disk. And there you have it. Disk swapping was never easier. It certainly was not as easy on the original PlayStation, man. I had a Pro Action Replay at the time, and man, disk swaps with that was no fun. So I was going to end the video there, but I've been seeing a lot of confusion around extensions showing up in the Garlic OS menu, some questions around parentheses, probably even questions about how to put your single disc games, but I figured I'd take a little bit of time to look at that, and we're going to look at just adding a single disc game, taking out parentheses, and even just taking out parentheses on m3u files just to see if we can see the extensions. I'm not sure how it works, but why don't we find out? So back to the ROMs card. I'm going to go to my PlayStation folder. There it is. And let's copy a game over. So on the right side, I've got my games, Frogger. Why don't we copy Frogger over? Now you can see all my games already have a parentheses in there, and none of my games had extensions in the list. So I'm going to copy a separate game over. There we are, Hot Shots Golf. Why not? Copy that over. Now I'm going to go ahead and take the parentheses out of the name Hot Shots Golf 2. Take out the parentheses USA and the space. So let's see if Frogger shows up as just Frogger and Hot Shots Golf 2 shows up as Hot Shots Golf 2.chd. So back to the Ambernick. We're going to go to consoles, PlayStation. No extension. So you don't need the parentheses to hide the extension because the extension is not shown by default. So imagine if you're seeing an extension like .chd in Garlic, that means you have .chd in the name of the file. So you probably need to show extensions. But just for the heck of it, let's see. Yep, Hot Shots Golf 2 looks like it starts no problem. Yep, there's a golf ball. All right, let's go back and check out Frogger. Of course, Frogger should just work. Yeah, all right, Frogger works. So let's go back to the file system for a second. Let's try something else. I'm going to copy over something that uses an m3u. Yeah, Chrono Cross. Why not? Copy the disk files over. While that's going, let's go ahead and I'm going to rename Chrono Cross USA m3u. I'm going to take out the parenthesis USA there as well. And you can see that means actually that the Chrono Cross m3u doesn't match the name of the folder, but that shouldn't matter because the path is the same. But I'm curious if the m3u file extension will show up in Garlic. I'm going to copy over another m3u just for the heck of it. This one even has some characters in there. It's got the VII, which I guess are just letters, but either way, let's go ahead, get rid of that parentheses. Now this, I'm not even going to copy over the disk files. I'm just copying over the m3u. So back to the Ambernick, and nothing's showing up .m3u. Taking out the parentheses on Chrono Cross or Dragon Warrior, nothing's showing up as .m3u in the file name. So I don't know why anybody's talking about seeing .chu or seeing .m3u. I mean, obviously Dragon Warrior doesn't launch, there's no disks, but Chrono Cross launches just fine. So if you're seeing file extensions like .m3u or .chd in Garlic, you probably are doubling up on those extensions. And on your Explorer, on your computer, you need to show file extensions so that you can see that you're creating like double extensions and just get rid of them. So hopefully that helps. And there you have it. PS1 multi-disc games made, if not simple, possible, functional. Sometimes seeing a bunch of text describing what it is difficult, but actually seeing it is, well, believing. But hope you enjoyed it, and hey, stay tuned for the next videos in the series. And remember to have fun. Later.